Good evening. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. How are we? Welcome to the MCJ Report, episode number 36. Let me know that you can hear me loud and clear tonight. We are live on the MCJ Facebook page as well as YouTube. Pretty surprised that we've gotten this far from YouTube. We are fresh off our suspension, and so far so good. But of course, we know we can't rely on the big tech companies forever. That's right. We know that censorship is out of control. That's why I like using Rumble. That's right. Who here uses Rumble? They've got a great app. You can go and download it from the App Store. You can subscribe to me on Rumble. Morgan C. Jonas. I put all the replays on Rumble and all the segments as well. So if you're not on Rumble, go and get on it. It's a great app. You can cast from your phone to your television, and it's really good. Probably the best YouTube alternative out there, but best of all, it's censorship free. That's right. All right, great. I can see that we're connected. I see John, Terry, Kim, Maria, Clive, Hillary. How are you? Ashley, Fifi, Tony, Blaine, Sally. Great to see you guys. Want to welcome everyone here. There's Ash as well. I'm glad that you can hear everything loud and clear. We've got quite a lot on the show tonight. It's possible that I've even tried to put in too much content, but I suppose we'll see. And once we get through it all, we'll go through our usual Q&A so you can ask me some questions and we can interact and we will get it done one way or another. That's right. We just keep on going and we don't stop. And the truth is we're just getting started. Hey, that would make sense. All right. So who here saw this? Police officer in Brisbane in hospital with blood clots after the Pfizer vaccine reports. All right. I'm going to take you through this. Okay. So I'm going to read you the article. I'm sure a lot of you saw this. It's been covered in all the mainstream media outlets. Police officer in Brisbane in hospital with blood clots after Pfizer vaccine. Now, I know that people around the world have been reporting blood clots after taking the Pfizer vaccine. The Australian government didn't want to know anything about it. Maybe now they'll be forced to take a look. This was from today, actually. It says down here, Pfizer became the recommended vaccine for Australia under 50 earlier this month after the AstraZeneca jab was linked to rare cases of potentially life-threatening blood clots. And now we see here Pfizer with a blood clot. Surprise, surprise. We've had access to this information for a really long time via the Centers for Disease Control in the United States. But of course, the Australian government, as usual, has stuck their head in the sand and even doubled down and ordered an additional 20 million doses of Pfizer not that long ago, bringing the total up to 40 million. Right? The Australian government ignoring the reports from around the world and doing what they wanted to do because people were getting a little bit spooked out about the AstraZeneca vaccine. Now, we spoke about this the other day, but I feel that today is a fitting time to talk about it again. That's right, blood clotting illness, 30 times more prevalent in Moderna, Pfizer, COVID-19 recipients than AstraZeneca, and that's coming from Oxford researchers. So what does the Moderna and the Pfizer vaccine have in common? Both using mRNA technology, which has never before been used in vaccines for humans. The article says here, a potentially fatal blood clotting disease is 30 times more common among people who have received the COVID-19 vaccines produced by Moderna and Pfizer than those given the troubled AstraZeneca jab, researchers have found. A team of scientists from the University of Oxford has found that after vaccination, the AstraZeneca vaccine recipients were less likely to suffer portal vein thrombosis, blood clots in the artery from the intestines to the liver. Okay, so this is coming from Oxford researchers. You're more than welcome to do some Google searches on this and you can do your own research. Now, I want to touch on AstraZeneca just a little bit before we get back to Pfizer. You may have seen this. This was from last week. Denmark becomes first European nation to completely shun AstraZeneca COVID vaccination. That's right. So Denmark said they've had enough of AstraZeneca and they don't want it anymore. It goes on to say, Denmark had, however, continued to hold off using the vaccine. That's right, whereas other nations reinstated it. In Denmark, 2 cases of thrombosis, one of which was fatal, were linked to vaccinations after more than 140,000 people received the jab produced by the Anglo-Swedish pharmaceutical company AstraZeneca. So that was just 2 cases of blood clots, and Denmark essentially said, nope, that's it, we don't want it anymore. Now, we see reports coming from the CDC that show far more than 2 cases of blood clots coming from Pfizer and Moderna vaccines or alleged vaccines or whatever you want to call it. So the question we need to be asking ourselves is how come countries around the world are not responding to Pfizer the same way they're responding to AstraZeneca? There seems to be an inconsistency. There seems to be one is treated different from the other, which can only lead us to believe that perhaps there are other factors at play. Now, I'm going to remind you about something here, and this is from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention from the United States, from the Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System. And now you can go and look this up for yourself, okay? What we're looking at here are specifically blood clot events arising after people took either the Pfizer or the Moderna vaccine. And what we can see here is that there are 200 results when we specifically search for blood clots. You can go and do this yourself at home. This should be reported in the mainstream media because what we've seen is around Europe, we've seen the suspension of AstraZeneca for blood clot cases far below that of 200. Yet we see 200 here after Pfizer and Moderna, and no one's talking about it. No one's doing anything about it. Why do you think that is? Put that in the comments below. Now, it's really important to point out that one of the key differences between AstraZeneca and Pfizer is that Pfizer is a much more powerful corporation. So I'm going to take you through a little bit of info on Pfizer just to put in perspective exactly how powerful this corporation is and what their influence is on a political level. So what we see here, Pfizer ranking number 42 in the world in terms of market capitalization or market value, whichever term you want to use. And we see a market cap here of 217.71 billion US dollars. Okay, making Pfizer a very valuable and very influential company with extremely deep pockets. Now, to put that in perspective, if Pfizer was a nation, and if we are comparing Pfizer's market value to, say, the GDP of a nation, Pfizer would fit just between Greece and Peru, okay, and would come in around that mark, 49th or 50th in the world, essentially making Pfizer, if we're comparing market value to GDP, more valuable on paper than 75% of countries in the world. Now, that type of buying power and that type of influence produces extraordinary results for Pfizer politically in terms of their political lobbying. Pfizer, perhaps unlike very few other countries in the world, has the power, the political connections to lobby lawmakers, mostly in the United States, in order to influence legislation that is friendly towards Pfizer's shareholders. This has been going on for a really long time. It's most prevalent in the United States, but it also happens here in Australia. And that's something that nobody talks about, the pharmaceutical lobbying that takes place in Canberra. The media never seem to talk about it. Whenever this type of lobbying goes on, I don't know, Channel 7, 9, 10, they seem to be looking the other way. They seem to be sleeping or playing video games or doing something else. So I think that we need to start talking about it, because if we don't, then who will? So to put Pfizer in perspective here, this is from opensecrets.org. Last year, Pfizer lobbied the US government over $10 million, nearly $11 million. Now, you can go and check this out yourself. Once again, MCJReport.com. Go to my website, put your email address in, and I will send you these sources and these links so you can read it through thoroughly for yourself. Okay, you don't have to take my word for it reading off my screen here at home. I'll send you the links and you can read through them and verify them on your own. Now, moving forward here to biopharmadive.com, as you see here, Pfizer, Amgen, Lilly spent most to lobby Congress study fines. Now, this is from last year. I'm going to read to you a little bit here. Pharmaceutical and health product makers spent more than any other industry on lobbying the federal government between 1999 and 2018, scoring key victories along the way, a study in JAMA Internal Medicine found. Now, you'll see why I'm talking about this in a moment. I am theorizing a little bit here, okay? I'm not trying to assert that perhaps Pfizer has more political power than AstraZeneca, and that's why we've seen mostly a media blackout on blood clots from people that took the Pfizer jab and then, of course, later developed blood clots. I'm not saying that for sure, but I am pointing out something that can't be ignored, which is, of course, the buying power and the influential nature of Pfizer as a corporation. I'm just presenting this information to you. Make of it as you will, okay? But I'm not drawing any conclusions. I'm just simply pointing out some facts. All right, now if we read down a little bit further here, it says Pfizer, Amgen, and Eli Lilly were the biggest corporate spenders, with Pfizer alone accounting for $219 million, that's between the years we just mentioned there, in lobbying expenses, and $23 million in campaign contributions over the time period studied. Okay. PHRMA, the drug lobby, ranked the highest overall with $422 million spent on lobbying. Dive Insight. All right, the pharmaceutical and health product industries needed to spend only a small portion of their revenue to succeed in influencing policy across the country. Influencing policy as in policy that is favorable to the profits of the shareholders of these pharmaceutical corporations. It says here, concluded study author, Oliver Waters of the London School of Economics and Political Science, who you can look up for yourself, and you can go ahead and draw your own conclusions. So I just wanted to point that out to you, that we will see. We will see if the world starts treating Pfizer the same way it treated AstraZeneca in relation to these blood clots. I've shown you the information there from the CDC. We know that these reports are coming through from these vaccines that are using mRNA technology, yet mostly the media has been very silent about it. I don't know what the reason for that is, but on paper, of course, we look at Pfizer, we see how powerful Pfizer is, and we say, well, maybe Pfizer just has what it takes in order to influence media and the government. Not saying they do, I'm saying maybe they do. I can't know that for sure, but this is just one potential possibility. Anyway, share your thoughts with me and put your thoughts in the comments. Do you think the media will start reporting more fairly on Pfizer, or do you think we'll largely see a blackout? Of course, we've seen this new case right here. The media forced to report on it. Will it continue? And what will Scott Morrison say? The Australian government just committed to 20 million more Pfizer doses because they were concerned about AstraZeneca. Now we see in Australia, we've committed to, something like 170 million doses of various COVID-19 alleged vaccines. And it looks like people just don't want to take these vaccines. We're actually seeing a lot of hesitancy, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit. But that concludes the first part of the show, so let's keep it moving. Just making sure we're connected here. I can see Terry, Fifi, Daz, Lisa. Let me know that you can hear me okay. It appears that the connection is going and that we are connected and that you can hear me, so I am happy about that. Anyway, let's keep this show on the road. What's causing my cold? I found an interesting little article that I wanted to share with you. And this section will be pretty quick. This is coming from webmd.com. That's right, WebMD. What's causing my cold? I'm going to read to you here. Once again, mcjreport.com, put your email address, I'll send it to you. You know the drill. Your throat feels scratchy, you start sneezing and coughing, and pretty soon you're in the grip of a nasty cold. We've all been there, right? It happens to us every year. To add insult to injury, all that big time misery is from a tiny invader, a living thing called a virus. Okay, this may be news to some people, but this has been happening to us humans for a really long time. And no, it's not just one you need to dodge. There are more than 200 that can lay you low. It's likely that someday you'll have a close encounter with one of these types: rhinovirus, coronavirus, RSV, and parainfluenza. There are also a lot of viruses that doctors haven't identified. About 20 to 30% of colds in adults are caused by these unknown bugs. Okay, so according to WebMD, 20 to 30% of colds are caused by viruses that we have yet to identify. Okay, have a think about that. Have a think about how that could potentially interact with the PCR test. Just putting it out there. Okay, you know me, I don't like to tell you what to think. I just want to put the information out there and I ask you the question. All right, now under the section coronavirus, it says these tend to do their dirty work in the winter and early spring. Sound familiar? Winter, lockdowns, okay? The coronavirus is the cause of about 20% of colds. There are more than 30 kinds, but only 3 or 4 affect people. Okay, so according to this source right here, coronavirus is the cause of 20% of colds. That means roughly 1 in 5. So my question to you is, have you been sick in your life more than 5 times? If you have, according to this resource just here, chances are you have contracted a coronavirus at one point or another. So these have been around forever, yet all of a sudden 2020 hits and we're treating coronavirus as if it is the Spanish flu, locking down cities, destroying the economy, for coronaviruses which have been around for a really, really long time. I just wanted to point that out. Make of it as you will, and let's keep this show on the road. The government is getting desperate. That's right. I know a lot of you probably saw this, and that is that we have seen advertisements for pro-vaccine actors to take part in pro-vaccine visual propaganda. I'm going to show you the advertisement. Looks like it's paying pretty well. Okay, this is coming from starnow.com. Look at this. Actors wanted for pro-vaccination TV commercial, $900 for a day. Pretty good money. It goes on to say here, this is a pro-vaccine campaign. Women, men, toddlers up to 4 years old. Are you kidding me? And we have women's doctors, usage, all mediums. Right, okay. You need to be available for the 4th of May in Sydney. So This goes to show that the government is getting desperate. Now, you need to ask yourself the question, if this vaccine was truly the savior of humanity, would the government really be needing to spend your money and my money to pay these actors $900 for a single day's worth of work in order to try and convince the rest of us? You know, generally when something is a good idea, it speaks for itself. We know that, for instance, eating apples is a good idea. Nobody needs to convince us or pay anybody $900 a day to convince us that eating apples is good. Now, this indicates to me that there is hesitancy out there, and maybe, just maybe, Australians do not want to be part of this clinical trial. Why am I saying it's a clinical trial? Well, these are not my words. These are the words of the Health Minister, Greg Hunt, who said that we are the clinical trial. Okay, I'm going to play that clip for you because it's very important to remember what this man said, because nobody provided us with paperwork. Nobody asked us if we wanted to be involved in a clinical trial. Greg Hunt just simply announced that we're it. Okay, I'm going to play it now.
The world is engaged in the largest clinical trial, the largest global vaccination trial ever, and we will have enormous amounts of data. But what's the message for the public? It's safe. It's effective, it will help protect you, but it will also help protect your mum and dad, your grandparents, your nonna, all of Australia.
So there you go, Greg Hunt clearly expressing that we are the clinical trial and that supposedly these vaccines are safe and effective, even though we see around Europe and here in Australia temporarily suspending AstraZeneca, Denmark saying goodbye for good. We've seen our first blood clot after the Pfizer vaccine. We saw an elderly person, actually no, not even elderly, a woman in her late 40s, pass away shortly after taking one of the vaccines. And Greg Hunt has the audacity to look you in the face and tell you that a provisionally approved drug, not even with the complete approval, a drug whereby the clinical trials are only scheduled to conclude in 2023, is safe, and you should take his word for it, and you should do it for your grandparents? Who here thinks that Greg Hunt has violated his duty of care as Health Minister to the to the people of Australia? What an absolute joke this man is. Now, generally, making unfounded therapeutic claims would land you in a world of trouble with the Therapeutic Goods Administration in collaboration with the police. But not if you're Greg Hunt. If you're the Health Minister, you have a free pass, you can say whatever you want to say, and there'll be no consequences. That is something that absolutely needs to change. Now, moving on here, we see the government is spending almost $24 million to convince us to accept a COVID-19. $24 million of your tax money. Is this democracy, ladies and gentlemen? Did you vote for this? Did I vote for this? Nobody voted for this. Spending our money to try to convince us to take a drug that we never asked for, that we don't want, and that we don't need. It's an absolute disgrace. Now, moving on here, we see the establishment reaching deep into their bag of COVID vaccine party tricks. We see celebrities lining up to try to convince us that this is what we need to do. Hey, look at this, Hugh Jackman. If Hugh Jackman can do it, you can do it as well. Make some sort of, slimy joke out of it, trying to use his position as a wealthy, famous person to compel other people to take this shot. And we see all different types of celebrities. There's Mariah Carey, and there's a whole bunch of them. That's just one of several. Just lining up. Look how cool this guy is. He's got his beanie on. He's got his funky leather face mask. He's getting the vaccine. He's trying to tell you can do it too. Just absolute puppets for the pharmaceutical corporations and puppets for the shareholders of Pfizer, as are the governments that are enforcing and mandating these drugs without conducting any of their own research, without allowing debate. They're shutting down field experts that hold opposing views. They're not allowed to talk about it. The big tech companies are shutting down one expert after another that has come out to express concerns about these vaccines. And we're supposed to not worry about it because Mariah Carey and Hugh Jackman roll up their sleeve and take it and say that we should do it too. So therefore, we should just disregard the never-ending list of experts who are speaking out on a regular basis, right? And we should listen to the celebrities, because the celebrities know better than experts. All right, so we see here, of course, the government kind of scrambling. National Cabinet endorses Prime Minister's push to offer AstraZeneca COVID-19 to more people over 50. They want to get people vaccinated and jabbed up as quickly as they possibly can. It's a race to the bottom, I say. So let's have a look at some hesitancy from around the world. That's right. there are people around the world who, believe it or not, are not as excited about this so-called vaccine as is Scott Morrison. All right, this is coming from South China Morning Post. Serbia sees influx of vaccine tourists as citizens shun COVID-19 shots. This is a pretty interesting story. So the citizens of Serbia actually showing hesitancy to get the COVID-19 shot, whether it's Pfizer or what have you. And the government has responded by inviting tourists into the country to take the vaccines instead because the Serbian citizens don't want it. Look at this. The government is begging people to take the life-saving jab. Life-saving. It sounds like a therapeutic claim. How are they able to make these claims without backing it up? Do you see the language they're using? It's absolutely ridiculous. Anyway, amid local resistance against vaccinations. Okay, Serbians saying, hey, we don't want it. You can keep it. You can go shove it. With jabs in abundance, last week Serbia took the highly unusual step of offering foreign citizens the chance to apply to have a shot. So what is it? Go for tourism, spend some money, and go and get a Pfizer shot or AstraZeneca shot. And there we can see a protest in Belgrade, Stop COVID-19 Terror. And we see these types of protests occurring all over the world. This is a city from the Philippines. 47% shun COVID-19 vaccination, saying that they don't want it. Italy pushes back as healthcare workers shun COVID vaccine. So we see in Italy an ever-growing avalanche of healthcare workers saying they don't want anything to do with it. And here we are. Scovid himself, that's right, ScoMo plus COVID equals Scovid. Now the Prime Minister should do the decent thing and take that Australian face mask off his face, because I say there's nothing Australian about the man. The man's using fear tactics, and I say that he can't be trusted. He said the vaccine wouldn't be compulsory. He said we won't hold you down and make you take it. Now we see him gushing over vaccine passports. Now we see him just pushing to get as many people jabbed up as quickly as possible. We hear the potential for people to lose their jobs should they decline to take this provisionally approved vaccine, whereby the clinical trials are only scheduled to finish in 2023. Now, this is an article here from Melbourne University. More Australians becoming wary of COVID-19 vaccines. Goes on to say, hesitancy and refusal to take COVID-19 vaccine poses a major barrier to achieving herd immunity. You know, once upon a time, herd immunity used to actually refer to a natural process of a citizenry developing antibodies, but somewhere along the line, the term was manipulated to include vaccines and would mean that restrictions on behaviours, freedoms, and mobility will continue indefinitely. Well, the restrictions on behaviours and freedoms have nothing to do with a so-called provisionally approved vaccine and everything to do with we the people taking our country back by any means necessary. Who here agrees with that? Goes on to say, using data from Melbourne's Institute fortnightly, taking the pulse of the nation survey, we have found that the willingness of Australians to get vaccinated has declined substantially from 4 months ago across all population groups. Now, I just want to bring to your attention that this was actually published in February. It says here, the percentage of Australians willing to be vaccinated fell from 74.4% in October to 66.2% in February 2021, a drop of 8.2 percentage points. I wonder what it is right now in April. It says, this includes those who say they don't want to be vaccinated, the proportion of whom has increased from 12% in October to 19.4% in early February 2021. It also includes those who report being unsure, the proportion of whom increased from 13.6% to 14.4%. MCJReport.com, I'll send it over to you. The Financial Review echoed that particular study. It said a third of people are worried about the COVID-19 vaccine. That was from February. The Taking the Pulse of the Nation survey by the Melbourne Institute into the impact of COVID-19 found solid support for the vaccine. 66% of those surveyed will be willing to get vaccinated. I mean, I wonder what the sample pool was. Who exactly were they asking? So what we definitely see here is people beginning to ask their own questions. You know, I started asking questions early on in relation to the PCR test because Daniel Andrews, it became apparent that he was using manipulative and coercive methods to try and sort of compel people, coerce and manipulate people into getting a PCR test. This really hit home with me when Daniel Andrews exploited the death of a young man in his early 20s and blamed the young man's death on COVID, of whom we later found out actually died from a drug overdose. and he used this as a mean. Daniel Andrews exploited this young man's death as a means of scaring us into submission, into following the unfounded chief health officer's directions and trying to herd us into those testing stations. And now they're trying to herd us into mass vaccination hubs. Who here remembers that reference and what I'm talking about? So whenever I see somebody using manipulative tactics, being deceitful, deceptive, lying, using extreme pressure tactics and coercion to try to get me to do something I don't want to do, I sit back and I ask questions. I say, why is this person trying to sell me so hard? Why is this person trying to manipulate me? Surely, if it was for my own good or your own good, they wouldn't need to use these coercive measures and manipulation. This is just a matter of common sense. Think about it, please. And I know that you know this, so maybe I'm helping you to develop some ammunition for when you're sitting around the dinner table with your friends and family. We all know people like it. We all know people who, without asking any of their own questions, they trust the government, they trust Pfizer. Pfizer can do no wrong. How about asking these people the question, why is the government using these extreme manipulative tactics and coercion to try to get us to do it if it's such a good idea? Let's see, what do we have here? Okay, that wraps it up for this section. So there's SCOVID right there, the no jab, no pay master. Anyway, I'm just going to make sure that we're still connected. I can see Daz, Teresa, Suzanne, Terry, Margaret. It's great to have you guys here. Hopefully the connection is okay. I know that sometimes we have issues, but the good news is that I will re-upload this episode on Rumble. This episode will remain up on Facebook, and I'll also break it down into segments so that you can watch it at your leisure. Once again, mcjreport.com, put your email address in, and I will send you all the sources, all the links that I use in my reports. All right, what do we have next? No justice in Canada. I'm going to share with you a pretty scary story that took place in Canada, most likely coming to a courtroom near you, whether you're here with us in Australia or somewhere else in Europe or maybe the UK. So check this out. This is pretty bad. This is coming from the Daily Wire. Court grants Alberta's request to forbid jailed pastor from challenging health order during trial. So this story is in relation to a pastor who refused to abide by their chief medical officer's directions and said, no, I'm not going to give in to fear. I'm going to keep my church open and allow my congregants to gather. That's what this pastor said. Now, unfortunately, things have not gone well for this individual in court. I'm going to read to you a little bit about this story here. In fact, I'm going to read you the whole article because it's pretty short and it really sums it all up. A provincial court in Alberta, Canada, ruled earlier this week that Pastor James Coates, who was jailed earlier this year after holding church services, will not be allowed to challenge the constitutional validity of Alberta's Public Health Act during his upcoming trial. The provincial court in Stony Plain, Alberta, also ruled that the government will not have to produce scientific evidence to support the order, according to a press release from the Justice Centre for Constitutional Freedoms. Government lawyers told the court that the Alberta government could not produce any scientific evidence in support of Dr. Hinshaw's orders in time for the May 3rd trial. The Alberta government Crown Prosecutor had before sought to delay the May 3rd trial so the prosecution could have more time to gather evidence. Coates, who is a pastor who pastors Grace Life Church near Edmonton, was arrested in February and jailed for more than a month after conducting services in violation of the Health Act issued by Alberta's Chief Medical Officer, Dina Hinshaw, which limited congregations to 15% capacity. The JCCF filed challenges to the constitutionality and legality of Hinshaw's orders, which the court will not hear until an unknown later date. After 13 months of violating charter freedoms, the Alberta government refuses to present evidence in support of lockdowns in court, and unfortunately the courts have permitted the government to delay facing accountability in regard to charter violations, said lawyer John Carpe, who is president of the Justice Centre. Okay, so what we have here, right, the pastor is essentially using the argument in court that the corona measures signed off by their chief medical officer are disproportionate to the threat of corona, okay, which in my opinion and in the opinion of millions of people all around the world, I'm sure, is a sound argument. The pastor kept his church open. Now he's saying, listen, you need to prove to me that the measures justified the risks. But what we can see here is that simply the government could not, as it says, produce any scientific evidence in support of Dr. Hinshaw's orders. So they could not produce scientific evidence, and they're refusing to even accept this basis as an argument. You see, governments around the world, they don't need to prove the proportionality of these COVID measures in relation to the supposedly new SARS-CoV-2 virus. They don't need to prove it because they have revolutionary conviction. All right? You can't ask them any questions. You're not allowed to debate them. You're not allowed to take them to court. They just know better than you. That's literally their argument. This is like communist Cuba, executing people based on revolutionary conviction. You know, long gone now are the days of a fair trial, presenting evidence. No, we don't need that anymore. Revolutionary conviction is king, and governments are not required to prove beyond reasonable doubt that these non-evidence-based COVID restrictions justify the risk of this supposedly new novel coronavirus. Absolutely disgraceful. We wish this pastor all the best of luck, and hopefully he can keep fighting one way or another, but this is a very, very dangerous sign of what's to come. Anyway, moving forward. Yeah, we're certainly moving towards dictatorship in many ways more than one. And now we're going to talk outside of the corona craziness. Now we're actually going to go back to Canada, because Canada, I think, is leading the charge in creeping authoritarianism, with Justin Trudeau, of course, a control freak maniac, calling much of the shots that goes on in Canada. So we need to be careful, because this is happening all over the Western developed world. Have a look at this story. All right, father jailed for calling his transgender child, who was born female, his daughter, and denouncing her medical treatment. All right, so this is actually a man that went to jail for referring to his biological female daughter as his daughter, and referring to this girl as her. Yes, he went to jail for this. That's right. I'm going to read to you a little bit here. Canada, true north, strong and free, according to its anthem, is enthralled to transgender ideology. On Friday, a father was sent to prison. His crime, speaking out against the medical transition of his 14-year-old daughter, which should be his God-given right as a father to express concerns about something this poor girl may someday live to deeply regret. The man complained about doctors giving puberty blockers to the 14-year-old girl. As you would if you're a parent, you would complain about drugs being administered to your child that you don't know what the long-term effects are going to be or how it's going to affect your child's development, and refer to the child with pronouns she and her in defiance of a court order. So this is how bad it is in Canada. Courts are ordering parents to use certain words when referring to their own children in regards to pronouns. Now, this would have seemed crazy a few years ago, but these types of court orders are now enforceable and jailable to anyone that doesn't follow them. He was sent to prison for 6 months for contempt of court for referring to his daughter as a daughter. Goes on to say, British Columbia Supreme Court Justice Michael Tamman denounced his behavior as, quote, outrageous contempt of a court order imposed to protect the girl's identity. Well, how does this judge know that her father was not trying to protect her safety, her health, and trying to protect her against something that whereby the results of such a drug therapy are irreversible? So, but according to this justice, that's not what's important. It's the so-called gender identity. Goes on to say, he handed down a strong sentence on the man for blatantly and willfully and repeatedly defying publication bans. Goes on to say, pictured alongside the father during an earlier hearing, Alston straps his campaign to his body, his placard stating, children cannot consent to puberty blockers, stop the child abuse. Is that only fair and reasonable? That children should not be able to consent to undertaking drug therapy whereby the results are irreversible, whereby the course of natural development is hindered and changed and leads to God only knows what? Children cannot consent to puberty blockers. Who here agrees with that statement? Who here does not? I'm going to read to you a little bit down the article. Canada has been captured by gender identity ideology. Activist-led bills have been nodded through Parliament in Ottawa without the widespread public scrutiny that accompanied, for example, the proposed change to the Gender Recognition Act in England and Wales. Canada is really getting on board with this particular type of ideology and is enforcing theory and compelled speech. This is really dangerous. This is no different from any totalitarian country where you say the wrong thing, you utter the wrong word, and off to jail you go. Goes on to say, attempting to persuade the man's daughter to abandon treatment for gender dysphoria, referring to AB as a girl with female pronouns, whether to him directly or to third parties, shall be considered to be family violence. So this father, right, doesn't want his daughter to undertake this irreversible drug therapy, and in this Canadian court of law, that is considered family violence. A man not wanting his daughter to take this course of drugs, that is considered family violence. This is extremely twisted and backwards. This type of ideology, enforceable by law, poses an existential threat to our existence, okay? Just like we talk about the Chinese Communist Party. Chinese Communist Party is an external existential threat. This type of ideology that's enforceable by law poses an internal existential threat to our existence and a threat to our children everywhere. And it's a huge enemy, and it needs to be addressed. When it's considered family violence to talk to your 14-year-old daughter about the wisdom of experimental and, in my view, harmful medical treatment, or even refer to her by her sex, we can maybe understand why the father felt he had to continue to speak out to anyone who would listen. I'd like to find out who this father is. This is a very, very sad story. Put your thoughts in the comments. Now, it doesn't stop there. Moving on to a new article here, A Mutilation of Young Lives, How the Radical Transgender Bandwagon is Wrecking Girls' Bodies and Destroying Their Mental Health. A new book, Irreversible Damage, reveals how teenage girls are being duped into believing they want to be male and are pushed into taking puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, and undergoing double mastectomies. So you can read this book if you'd like to learn about it, Irreversible Damage, by Abigail Schreier. It's something that is being studied. Now, this brings me to something that happened here in Victoria not all that long ago, the conversion therapy bill that some of you know about, which was supposedly taking aim at archaic conversion practices, most of which have actually already been outlawed. It was quite a controversial bill. It raised a lot of concerns from various medical experts and religious institutions for what the implications of this bill may be, primarily in relation to people perhaps who are feeling a little bit concerned about their gender identity, could actually not be in a position to seek advice, whereby somebody giving advice to one of these young people could actually be committing a crime due to this new legislation. So I'm going to just go into this a little bit because it relates to what we're just speaking about here. Okay, so the gender therapy bill actually poses a few issues because it's not in relation to sort of archaic practices like electroshock treatment or some type of torture method in order to change somebody from being gay to being straight. Okay, these practices are already illegal. It was a very long piece of legislation that also delved into the concept of gender ideology. So specifically, if a child is feeling confused about their gender, for instance, and if an adult, including their own parent, was to give advice to that particular child, trying to advise perhaps against, say, transitioning to the opposite gender, the parent could actually be guilty of a crime. Okay, now it's very problematic because what this seeks to do is criminalize the role of parenting in many instances. So I'm going to read to you a little bit from the article about this conversion bill because it's very dangerous, and I dare say we will see parents locked up here in Australia the same way that man was locked up in Canada. So it goes on to say here, what would the law do? The Victorian government wants to criminalise conduct in healthcare and religious settings that involve or attempt to change or suppress a person's sexuality or gender identity with or without their consent. with or without their consent. Okay, so say your 6-year-old son comes to you and says, "Mum, I think I'm a girl," and you say, "No, Tommy, you're a boy. You are a boy, and that's totally okay." Seems here that simply expressing that could be a crime. The penalty would be up to 10 years jail or up to $10,000 in fines if prosecutors can prove beyond reasonable doubt that a person's actions have caused serious injury, defined the Crimes Act 1958 as one that endangers life and is substantial and protracted. The new law was introduced because many of the practices around gay conversion therapy, including spiritual guidance, are not captured under the existing legislation. Prayer-based activities that do not target individuals, such as sermons expressing a statement of belief, will not fall under the law. The government says prayer will constitute breach of the law if a person intended to change or suppress an individual's sexual or gender identity, okay, which is super broad and super generalized. So we read a little bit down why some groups concerned. Some groups condemn gay conversion therapy that harms individuals but have raised concerns about aspects of the bill. That's right, no one thinks that anyone should be tortured or punished or subjected to physical violence in order to try and change them. I personally don't believe that one's orientation can be changed. I personally don't think it's possible. I think some people just happen to have a proclivity one way or the other, and I'm not convinced that that can actually be changed. Goes on to say here, unfortunately, this bill doesn't just ban outdated and insidious practices of coercion and harm. The letter says the bill also criminalizes conversation between children and parents, interferes with sound professional advice, and silences ministers of religion from providing personal attention to individuals freely seeking care for complex personal situations. Dr. Kerry Rubin, chair of the college's Victorian branch, fears the bill will discourage some practitioners from treating vulnerable patients. He says the role of psychiatrists is often to challenge the ideas of their patients to explore reasons they feel a certain way. In a statement, the college also says the proposed legislation conflates the separate issues of sexual orientation and gender identity. Okay, so the conclusion I draw from this is, why is it perfectly legal for children to be influenced in schools via programs such as a Safe Schools program? Why is it okay for children to be influenced to, say, live a transgender lifestyle or to engage in some type of act such as cross-dressing, perhaps be led to believe that they're a different gender than what they were born with? Yet, on the other hand, if a parent tries to counsel their children out of this way of thinking, the parent becomes the criminal. But the ideologically driven teacher behind the Safe Schools program or a program like it is perfectly okay. So which one is it? It seems that it's okay for children to be indoctrinated, but should parents and other professionals try to counsel children out of that indoctrination, all of a sudden they become a criminal. And in the case of this gentleman from Canada, he's ended up behind bars. So this is a very dangerous, slippery slope, and we need to be aware of it because we are creeping towards totalitarianism, whereby the rights of parents are being stripped away as we speak and handed over to the overreaching, all-powerful state that has decided what is true, what is not, what is permissible, and what is not. Put your thoughts in the comments, because this is a very, very concerning concept, and it's one that I believe poses a threat to our existence as a free and open society. All right, what else do we have here? Okay, moving forward here. Yeah, so one of my supporters brought something very interesting to my attention the other day, which is we should be getting a refund for our passports. Who here has a passport? We know that it's not cheap to renew our passports, to pay the fees. We can't travel overseas anywhere. So will the government refund what we paid for our passports? What do you think? I don't think they will. Now, here's an interesting little article right here. Australians who defy New Zealand bubble to travel to another country could face prison. All right, so it seems that New Zealand is a little bit more lax allowing outgoing international travel than what we are in Australia. So should Australians travel to New Zealand on the so-called bubble and travel overseas, they could face prison for that. Now, not even a joke. Our God-given right to travel taken away from us, travel to another country by backdoor New Zealand, and you could end up in jail. That's right, it's crazy, but of course we're living in crazy times which is why it's more important now than any time ever before that we, the people, come together and make a commitment to being solutions focused, because if we don't, nobody will. The vast majority of politicians that work within the walls of our parliament, they've sold out. They're not batting for you, they're batting to keep intact their own careers and to uphold their own selfish interests. That's why I'm doing this show, that's why you're watching this show, and that's why we're all getting together to get involved in this fight. And there's many ways you can get involved, and we're going to talk about that. Now, just going to make sure that we're all connected. I can see people on Facebook. I can see people on YouTube. It looks like we seem to have around 200 people on Facebook. I'd like to welcome you all here. We're sort of at the tail end of the show now. We've been going for nearly an hour, and I can see about 16 people on YouTube. I can see Amanda, Sally, Margaret, Karen, Yvonne, Daz, Lisa, Rita, Barry, and Fifi. It's great to see you guys here. I'm going to do some Q&A. Barry says supposedly Maurice Payne cancelled the Belden Road tonight. I didn't see anything about that, but I'm going to look into it. I thought it was pretty interesting for all Scott Morrison's talk about throwing out the Belden Road initiative after the passage of the Foreign Relations Bill. He said, hey, I don't know what's going on. And Maurice Payne, the Foreign Minister, she can deal with it. That's what Scott Morrison said after heavily implying that he would be the one to ditch the Belden Road initiative. Okay, now I'm just going to get back to the show here. One second. Get rid of the jail bars. Okay, Operation Cycle Threshold. That's right. So after I disconnect tonight, I will be engaging in a Zoom meeting with a small group of volunteers, the team making up the Operation Cycle Threshold little squad that we've put together. So we have a strategy. We are going to do our best to find out how many cycles are being run on the PCR tests state to state, and I will publish the findings as they come through here on the MCJ Report and also mcjreport.com. Once again, if you have not signed up to my free newsletter, go to mcjreport.com and sign up. Something else I wanted to talk to you about, and that is that I have been having conversations with the two founders from the Canadian Frontline Nurses. They're wonderful people. They're doing a wonderful job. I can tell you they are very genuine and they have great hearts, dedicating their lives to helping people in the field of nursing and now dedicating their lives to speaking out against the government craziness and the many injustices that have been inflicted upon us since the inception of this COVID situation. We have a bit of a time zone difference, as you know, between Australia and Canada, but I am working with these two brilliant ladies to put a time together, and I will publish it soon. Okay, now just moving forward there's Paul saying you're happy to stand with me. Thank you so much. And there's Lisa there as well. Let's see. I think that's about it. Let me just go back to the browser. Oh, no, you don't want to see that guy, right? You don't want to see that guy again. Alrighty, where are we? I would like to give a shout out to this business, Fat V Jerky. That's right, so fatvjerky.com.au, run by a great guy, ex-Navy. His name's Tony. We've worked out a little affiliate situation, that's right. So whereby you can get a discount from the beef jerky. If you're like me, I love beef jerky. So I encourage you to check out Tony's store. Made in Geelong, so 100% Australian owned, Australian made. I would not recommend something that I don't eat myself. So you can go to his website. They've got lots of different flavors. Fatvjerky.com. Really great quality. If you put in the code MCJ, you'll get a 5% discount off already decent prices. I'll get a bit of a kickback. Tony makes a sale. You get amazing beef jerky and everybody wins. I like it when everybody wins. So this is just a little affiliate program that I worked out with Tony. Great guy. I like him a lot. fatvjerky.com.au. Of course, you can say no. So you can head over to reignitedemocracyaustralia.com.au. Click on the resources tab. You can say no. And there you will find a database of great information that is designed for fence sitters who may be not sure about perhaps some of the COVID measures. Perhaps they're feeling a little bit concerned about the coercion and manipulation that the government has engaged in. And it's a very easy to read section of the website to help perhaps tell the other side of the story otherwise ignored by the mainstream media. MCJReport.com, special reports. If you'd like to learn more about Pfizer's long history of corrupt and criminal behavior, go to MCJReport.com and click on the special reports tab, and you can check out Violated by Pfizer. I go into detail about many different court instances, many different lawsuits where Pfizer had behaved in very, very predatory manners. Many lives have been destroyed, and Pfizer has a long history of criminal behavior, which begs the question, why on earth should we trust this organization? If you'd like to support the show, you go to mcjreport.com/support. This is my full-time work now. I'm 100% committed to this cause. This is all I want to do. I don't want to do anything else. I'm here for you. I'm fighting for you, and we're doing this together. And of course, I cannot do this now without your financial support. I went as far as I could, completely self-funded for a really long time, and then I couldn't go any further. And now I'm really grateful that you're getting behind me, and I want to say that I appreciate it. You can support from as little as $5. Everyone that does will be admitted to the private MCJ supporters Telegram chat room, where I'm very active and we send ideas back and forth, and we talk about things like upcoming events as well, and there's some special events for MCJ members. So if you are to become a contributor, I'll certainly bring you into that group, and that's where we do a lot of talking and a lot of sharing of stories. In saying that, of course, if you're going through a difficult time financially, I would prefer that you hold off for now. All right, I think that's just about everything. Now, we've been going for nearly an hour, but I'm definitely keen to do a little bit of Q&A. So if anyone has any questions for me, speak now, and I'll hang out and we'll have a bit of a chat. There's Mark there. Mark's a great guy. He is a candidate from Western Australia. I like Mark. He's got great policies. He supports Australia withdrawing from the United Nations. Maybe you agree with that as well. He's against the COVID restrictions. He can't stand Mark McGowan. So go ahead and follow Mark Rowley. Julie says, please talk about Serene. Well, she has a hearing tomorrow, so we wish her the best of luck with that. I'm going to actually make this time at 8 o'clock. 8 o'clock, that's right. So I feel that we should do the show at a regular time every day. And I ran a poll on Telegram, and 8 o'clock was the overwhelming winner. So 8 o'clock it will be. Oh, there's also something else that I wanted to talk to you about. Who here has seen the film called The Pushback? Have you seen it? I think it's on one of the platforms. It's actually on quite a few of the platforms right now. The Pushback is sort of like a collaboration film of all the freedom protests from all over the world. It's on a platform called Odyssey. Actually, that's where I saw it. Who here has seen The Pushback? I think it's great. I'm just gonna have a read through some comments here. Lisa says the Bolton Road is ripped up. I'll cover that on the next episode for sure. Dad says Pushback is good. Now I'm just gonna try and pull it up a little bit. I'll see if I can find it for you. Oracle Films. I think that's who makes it. Oracle Films, The Pushback. Yeah, I'm just gonna open it up for you on the browser. So yeah, it's great. It goes for about an hour and a half. It's got sort of snippets from every country. You can check it out on Odyssey. I believe it's on Rumble as well. Or you can go to oraclefilms.com. And I was actually really humbled to see that they chose me. They chose to feature me as the Australian for the Australian section of their show. There you go. They used a section of my speech. So I don't know who they are at Oracle Films, but I really like to thank them and say thanks for using part of my speech. And it's an honor and a privilege to be featured in this film. So you can go and check it out in its entirety, oraclefilms.com. All right, I'm going to start reading some questions now. I apologize. I've been getting a little bit distracted. Okay. let me see here. Jackie says, can you follow up on the Clear phones that Dolores Cahill is linked with? I've heard a lot of good reports about the Clear phone. Actually, I'm going to start using one. Okay, so after I use it for a bit, I'll let you know how I go with it. Okay, so I'll let you know. Paul Whittington says, can we work on getting a government grant on healthy nutrition and maybe promote homegrown vegetables giving free seeds? I don't think the government will be into that. I think the government's more interested in spending our money on vaccination coercion campaigns and buying more so-called vaccines. Oracle Films, that's right, Daz. Let's see. Maria says, where is Dan the man? Well, we saw a very suspicious black and white photo from him at home, supposedly, allegedly with his daughter. Does anyone know why the video was black and white? I can tell you right now, and I'm not saying this for sure, okay, I'm not saying this, but it's a lot easier to manipulate and doctor or Photoshop an image if it's black and white rather than color. That is because color images are harder to match and harder to bring two images together to make it look authentic. A lot easier to do if it's black and white. Not saying it's doctored, not saying it's Photoshopped, just telling you a little true fact about manipulated images when it comes to color versus black and white. Terry says, what do I think of Australia making vaccines here? I think we should be making other things. We should be focusing on many other industries, and vaccines, I don't believe, is one of them. Just reading through the comments here. Wayne says, great show. Thank you very much. That's kind of you to say that. Just scrolling down. Helen says, please tell us how to get a Clear phone. Perhaps Monica and I will provide them, like a point of sale type of thing. I'm not completely sure yet. The phone Helen's referring to is an encrypted phone which has various additional protocols for protecting your data. There's Mark's Perth page there. That's Mark's Real Talk WA. You can go and follow Mark. He's a great guy. I like him a lot. He's going to be contesting in the next federal election. My firm belief is that our parliament would be a better place if Mark was in it. Fifi says, where's Jenny Makakos? I don't know. Have you seen her? I haven't seen her. Alice says that you're with me all the way. Thank you, Alice. And I'm with you all the way as well. Earl says we should be making cars and computers. We should be, but unfortunately, what we see is the results of decades worth of traitorous trade deals that have put foreign interest in front of Australian interest for too long. Okay, that's why I'm getting involved in the political process, and that's why we're doing what we're doing, because Australia is being sold out. Sold out to the corporations, the multinationals, and the small to medium-sized Australian businesses have been completely stepped on, spat on, and shoved to the side. And it's time that we all stood up and said, no more, we're not going to take it anymore. Helen says, thank you. You're more than welcome. You are totally more than welcome. I do this for you guys. I'm so appreciative that we're all working together. This is going to sound cliche, but you and I, we're in this together. I just happen to be maybe somewhat of a spokesperson, but you and I, we're involved in the same fight and we have the same views, and we're going to keep going, and we're going to do everything we can. Just having a read through. Dean says, thank you, a great work, no worries. Daz says who's going to the next protest. No worries, Maria. Thank you for being here. Rita, thank you for being here. Michelle. John says, can Morrison and Hunt be accountable for vaccine damage given they ignore the warnings? You know, that's a very good question, John. Now, these vaccines are on a provisional approval with the Therapeutic Goods Administration. Now, what we've seen in the past from the TGA is that people that make unfounded therapeutic claims about drugs that are not completely approved can be held liable for both civil and criminal damages. Are we going to see the same standard held to Greg Hunt that looked us in the eye and said that these vaccines are safe and effective? Okay, whereas there's another side of the story to the claim Greg Hunt said. So will Greg Hunt be investigated by the TGA and the police, or will he not? I probably think he won't be. Thanks, Marg. It'd be great if you guys could invite your friends to watch the show. You know, I think it's a pretty pretty sort of friendly format that we've got here on the MCJ Report. You know, we don't go down the rabbit hole of crazy ideas that can't be backed up. Everything we talk about on the MCJ Report can be backed up, cross-referenced, and independently verified. That is the absolute goal. Randall says, how can you get involved in the Pcr Project? Randall, send me a message and I will get you on the Zoom call, which is going to start really soon. So if you send me a message on Facebook, I'll get you on board, my friend. Alrighty. Well, that looks like just about it. I got to wrap this up because I'm going to get on board a Zoom call in just a couple of minutes with my team, my Operation Cycle Threshold team, and we will be beginning our research. Okay, thank you so much for watching. Lots of love, and I'll speak to you all really soon.